Hello, everyone. I am JamieGantt, and I'm really excited to bring you into this episode where we are going to explore the chaos, the mess, the beautiful unfolding that is becoming oneself. And I cannot wait to share with you all of the crazy lessons and strategies and words of wisdom that have come from my own journey that hopefully you can see within yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the place where real people with real transformations come to share the roadmap behind the clarity, confidence, and courage we are all searching for. So if you've ever felt the weight of success and maybe it was looking good on paper, but it actually just feels wrong in your body, I think today's episode is going to feel like we just recorded it for you. I'm your host, Taruvinga. And while you're at it, I just want to make sure that you subscribe to the channel wherever you are to make sure that you're not going to be missing out on any of these exclusive conversations. Now, today, I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with JamieGantt. Now, Jamie, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Prosper. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I've always wanted to be around famous people, so I think this will do for now.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Absolutely. For those that are wondering what Jamie is famous for, well, she's a former corporate leader who traded burnout for boldness, and a woman who literally packed her life into bag full of hopes and dreams, or should I just say courage. And she carried that across the world, from America to Prague and now in Joburg. And then she also went on and built radically active coaching while she was discovering who she really was behind all those titles. Now, I mean, obviously, Jamie, bless her, she also travels the world having full conversations with the universe out loud. She was just telling me right now that that's exactly how she rolls, and she proudly calls that the most stable relationship yet. And I think those in the audience are probably just shaking their heads, wondering what to expect here. So we're going to unpack her journey, obviously looking at the ambition, the collapse, the silence, the healing, and also the reinvention. And we're going to be looking at her upcoming book, Becoming Myself, which is already shifting how women reclaim self-trust, identity, and purpose. So while you're listening, I just want you to note where in your life you're actually just doing a performance than actually leaving, and just try and resonate with the story that we are about to unpack here. Now, Jamie, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. Your story starts off as somebody who was climbing the corporate ladder, hitting the milestones, obviously checking every box, but you do then come across a lot of things, along the way. So maybe just open us up with what were you sort of doing, and what was that career that you were so hell-bent on succeeding in?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. Like, I think I would have to backtrack just a little bit and start with my background. So I grew up in a very toxic, very unstable household. So my parents were they were partiers, basically, drugs, alcohol, like lots of parties, lots of instability. My mother sadly couldn't hold down a job to save her life, it felt like. So we didn't really have money. We didn't have a lot to go from. And I remember growing up just thinking that whatever I do with my life, I don't want to be this. And so I think I very much was running away from where I came from. And in my early adulthood, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't go to university straight away. I finished high school and I just started working odd jobs. And then eventually I found myself being a heavy partier as in my early 20s and basically doing exactly what I witnessed my parents doing. And I stopped myself on one New Year's Eve and I thought, this cannot be my life. I am not doing this anymore. I need to do something. And so I enrolled in school at 23 finally to get my undergrad, and I pursued business because I really just didn't know what else to do. And I ended up working in call centers as a customer service rep. And from that, I worked my way up. I went from a rep to a new hire trainer to a supervisor to a manager. And throughout that process, I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about influencing people, about performance management, about metrics and KPIs and all the things that corporate thrives on. And all throughout, I really just felt like, okay, I need to tick boxes. I need to be everything that I didn't like, everything that's the opposite of where I came from. And that was my driving force. And so I worked, and I worked, and I worked. I was, first in, last out. I took my work home with me, and I did everything that I was supposed to do. Married a great guy on paper. And I lived the life. I got a great apartment. I lived in Chicago. I was there. I had a 401k. I did all the adult things that you're supposed to do. And it began to slowly unravel eventually. And I found myself just really questioning everything because as much as everything looked good on paper, I just felt exhausted and empty. Like everything just felt pointless. And I thought, why have I been doing all of this? Like I don't feel fulfilled or happy or it feels like everything is not meaningful. Like I don't like it. I don't
Mm,
like it.
oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us into that sort of realm. So obviously growing up, like you said, it didn't obviously give you a strong starting point in terms of role models and things of that nature. But did you have any other siblings too that would have experienced this at the same time with you?
I did, yeah. So I'm the eldest, and then I have my sister who's a year younger than me, and my younger brother who is 4 years younger than me. And actually, I feel sometimes I kind of playfully joke about it, but it's actually kind of serious. We're trauma bonded. Like we stayed close, and it's not necessarily because we get along well or we have lots in common. We're very trauma bonded. We feel like we went through battle together. And my sister also has become very successful. She's a pharmacist. My brother also, he's a manager for this government like contractor company that takes care of infrastructure in the city. So like we've all kind of gone on to get away from how we grew up. And I think that it's interesting. It's a special relationship that's developed between siblings who go through something like that. I think it's different from other siblings that I've witnessed. Like some siblings grow up very close because they had this great supportive, lovely, stable environment. Some siblings grow up feeling at like the sibling rivalry never dies. Um, but I think with us, it's just like it's a special kind of support system, I think, that comes from that experience.
Oh, absolutely. We're societal beings, and
Mm.
obviously we have to find our own, that would be the way that we then would find food. I mean, back in the time in the caveman days, if you were orchestrated, is that the word? Orchestricized by your clan or your people, then that meant the
Yeah.
saber-tooth tiger was going to have lunch that particular day. So you can only imagine,
Yeah.
even though we are not in an environment where, the saber-tooth tiger is let loose, but that alone brings people together and things of that nature. So, and thank you so
Mm.
much for giving us that tidbit of information, because then showcases that obviously, even though you were exposed to that, that didn't become your life. But besides the parents being the immediate sort of point of reference or yardstick, were there any other influential people around or some sort of role models that you would have looked up to and said, at least
Mm.
I would like to be, do, and have or look like that?
Mm. It's interesting. I think this is true for a lot of people, but because I didn't have any role models within my life or in my upbringing, everything I got was from TV. It was all media. So I looked at characters like, I remember the first person I looked up to, interestingly, was a character by the name of Darlene from a show Roseanne, which is probably one of the worst characters to look up to. And then I also looked up to Blossom, Maya Bialik, a very old show. So these are the people I looked up to because I didn't have anything else to gauge from. And then as I got older, the show Gilmore Girls came out, and Gilmore Girls became my thing. I wanted to be like Rory, who is this very academic, very driven. And I think that because of her, it's why I did so well when I went to university. I was not a good student when I was in, grade school, high school, etc. But when I got older and I decided to go get my undergrad. I graduated with honors. I was summa cum laude, and I did the same thing when I eventually went to get my master's in psychology because I got very into the academia because of what I witnessed on television. So very interestingly, like media was such a strong influence on me, and I think that's important to recognize actually for a lot of people, like to understand where your influences come from. And I think also being mindful of what sort of media you expose yourself to, because there's a lot of media that I was exposed to that I was building my identity around, and my actions and behaviors were influenced by that were not healthy. I was also influenced by Sex and the City. I thought I was Samantha Jones for a lot of my adult life. That is not healthy. That's not a way to live. But that was what I had. And it wasn't until later when I started working in call centers and I started working my way up, I was very fortunate to work at a company that believed in personal development and professional development and personal growth. And so I was exposed to a lot of people that taught me how to take personal accountability, take ownership of my actions, to admit when I've made a mistake, to do the internal reflection that is required of leaders to become stronger personalities in the sense that they're grounded in who they are, and you can find your leadership voice, and you can really help people identify their strengths and their values and what it is that's important to them so that you can create, these great dynamic teams and things like that. So being in that environment really was such a blessing, and it really got me on the path of understanding myself better and understanding the value of connection with people who are a positive influence. So,
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for that, because you're absolutely right. Fish don't see the water that they swim in. And when you start dressing, acting, talking like your favorite actors, you automatically embody that. And half of the time, I actually see this in my kids. When they wear their Halloween costume, they automatically become that particular character, jumping, skipping, and everything else, just exactly as a character does. So you might not realize, while it's happening to you, but obviously your brain automatically starts acting on the personalities of that person. And I like that warning that you just given people: be careful what your influences are. I mean, like, you never know. And I think the people that are watching the online prosperity show are doing the right thing, because obviously they're getting advice from, people like yourself. But you obviously were almost about to fall off the bandwagon yourself at 20. What happened?
so when I finally made the decision to shift, it was, and I actually talk about this in my book. I paint it out quite vividly. So I had been just sort of working odd jobs, partying it up, lots of drinking. I was very heavily in cocaine. Like that drug just grabbed me. And I was deep in it. And I remember one New Year's Eve, it was 2006 going into 2007. And I was at a bar with friends, high as a kite, drunk as could be. And I was looking around, and this is, back when smoking in bars was still acceptable in the States. There's a smoking ban now. But so, smoke filled dive bar. It was karaoke night. I'm out of my head, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm seeing all of the people that I've chosen to spend my time with are all of the people that I grew up afraid of. Like they reminded me of my parents' friends who were so loud and obnoxious and always drunk and on drugs and talking like ranting about the government and whatnot. Like that was what I was surrounded by. And I just looked and I had this tiny little lucid moment. And I was like, this cannot be my life. I just became my mother. How did this happen? And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And so I remember taking my leave early as soon as the midnight hit. We all gave our Happy New Year. I said goodbye to my friends. And I don't think I talked to them for like 3 months after that. I just sort of went back to my apartment and holed up and thought about, okay, how am I going to stay sober? How do I not go out anymore? What am I going to do with my life now? And that was what kind of put me on the path to going to get my undergrad in business and moving into the call center space and just saying goodbye to all of that. And I say it now as if it was just this like montage of, oh yeah, like get clean, whatever. It was so hard. It was so hard. I was depressed for years, and the social anxiety was insanely through the roof. Just being around people felt like, oh, how do I do this? Because when you get used to being around people with no inhibitions and under the influence of drugs and alcohol, it feels different suddenly when you're out and you're sober. It's like, how do I act? What do I say? What are they thinking? What do I do? And the brain just, so yeah, it was a lot of years of shedding the the habits and the comforts that I had created for myself for so long that were not healthy comforts.
Congratulations for seeing that. You see, because fish don't see the water that they swim in. And from what you're saying, this kind of sounds like it became familiar because you just grew up around this, and it is what it is, kind of thing. But you did say you'd already started going on the path of self-development and things of that nature. Would that have been the thing that really woke up inside of you, or was there any support in order for you to really then snap out of it completely?
Mm. Yeah, I think that so that moment was just I think that was my first, I would say my first turning point. So because I was so young, and it was just it really was, it was like a random moment of lucidity. I don't know how it happened. I think maybe the universe was trying to like give me a little nudge, like, hey, you're doing it wrong. Stop. And so, but once I made that decision, I was lucky enough to have made some new friends. So when I was at university getting my undergrad, I was at Columbus State because I was living in Ohio at that time. And I had made some friends in the classes that I was taking. And I remember there was actually a young man that I had started dating who was in class with me, and he was what the kids call straight edge. So he was completely sober, never touched anything. And he actually was a very kind, very stable support system during the time that we were in a relationship together. And he got me into the 12 steps. And so I did the whole 12-step thing. And he was just like a very stable, very steady person to have around. And I think I was really lucky to sort of find that relationship. It's interesting how romantic relationships can serve more than just like love and we're so infatuated with each other, whatever. Like it can actually be a very important facilitator for growth and for development and to kind of get you to the next step, even if it's not going to last forever, which a lot of relationships don't, but they serve such an important purpose in both people's lives. I would like to think he got some value out of that as well, but definitely made a big difference for me. And he kind of helped me find that aligned way forward. So it's always people. You can't do this stuff alone. Like humans can't human alone. I say that to my clients all the time. Like you can't do stuff by yourself. People like to say, "Oh, I'm hyper independent. I don't need help from anyone." No, that's bull. You do. We all need people. Like you have to have people around that have your best interest at heart and who really want to see you succeed. And when you have those people, they will be there when you feel like you just can't do it anymore. And it's like, okay, cool. Like have that safe space to land. And then they'll remind you who you are. They'll remind you what you're capable of. And then you just keep on going.
Absolutely. And we do have people that come into our lives and they do come in for a reason. And once that maybe they're part in that journey that is aligned to our growth is probably done, they will just fizzle out and move on and maybe do the same for yet another soul that's out there. So that is pretty remarkable. So you went on, obviously you cleaned up. Wasn't there any relapse with that? Because usually half of the time some people 5 steps forward and then
Yes.
25 back and things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some relapses. There were some getting off track. So if I think about it so that was 2007 basically is when I started kind of shifting things. And then I got my undergrad, I worked my way up through the call centers, and then around the age of 30, so what are we talking? 2010, 2011-ish, somewhere around there. I I was at this point I was a supervisor, and I had been dating someone new, and this is who actually would become my husband. We got married in 2013, and at that point now I was a manager in a call center in Chicago. And so like throughout, like if I look at all of that span of time, there was a lot of like kind of going off course, correcting, going off course, coming back. And then I think when I met my now ex-husband, that was my time where I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with the partying. I'm done with everything. I'm going to get married. I'm going to settle. I'm going to have a good life. And I shouldn't have said it settle like that. Settle down. It wasn't settling. He's a great person. But yeah, so like that was what I did. And even before Chicago, we had relocated to Los Angeles. He was an actor. So we went to Los Angeles for him to pursue his acting career and hated it. Like LA, it's just, the people there are not good energy. And then we eventually went to Chicago where he was going to pursue theater. And so that's how we kind of ended up there. And I spent almost 5 years in Chicago before finally reaching burnout and packing my bags and deciding to be a nomad.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that. So obviously your love for actors just didn't end on the screen, right? You brought them home.
Yeah. It's true. And I've always been attracted to performers. If you look at like the collection of my romantic encounters, musicians, frontmen, actors, musical theater, like all of these, that's what I gravitate towards. But when you grow up with the media babysitter, that's what you get.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Now, obviously, in between those times, you were, like you said, checking every box, leveling up the corporate ladder, even ticked the marriage box. But from what I am gathering, inside something was quietly breaking. What was
Mm.
not exciting about you actually achieving all those things that you would have wanted as a kid, in this now, future self of yours?
Yeah, I remember as the years went on, when I look back on it now, I should say, I didn't really fully comprehend it when I was in it. But as I reflect on it now, when I look back, every milestone ticked and every promotion, every success at work. I remember being like one of the top performing teams in the enterprise, and that was supposed to be like a big deal. But every one of those things, it always felt like somehow it wasn't really mine. Like it wasn't my success, it wasn't my joy, it wasn't my celebration. And I think most people would identify that as imposter syndrome. And that's kind of what I told myself, is like, oh, I'm having imposter syndrome. But it was deeper than that. It was that it felt like it wasn't mine because it wasn't necessarily what I chose from a space of true desire. It was what I chose from a space of survival and escape. And there's a significant difference. And I think a lot of people don't recognize what's behind the choices that they're making. Why are your dreams your dreams? Why are your goals your goals? I didn't choose that path because it was something that I really wanted. Like, I want to be a successful manager in customer service. Like, that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't care about customer service. I was really good at it, but I didn't care that much. And so it wasn't actually what I wanted. It was just what I thought I needed to to survive my life. And I got to this point where I was sitting and I was thinking about my life and I was like, I just need to do something else. I don't know what, but something. I need something. My life feels so empty and I'm supposed to be happy right now. This is what happy is supposed to feel like, right? And I'm just like, but it doesn't. It doesn't feel happy. I thought maybe it was because my relationship wasn't going so well. It was kind of rocky. I thought maybe it was because I was just, getting a little bit bored with my job. I had all kinds of theories as to what was happening, but I wasn't really clear on why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I just got this like, there's just this thing inside me, like in my gut, that was just like, just do something, just get out, just go away, just do something that's not this. And so that's what I did.
Now, Jamie, before you went on this, you were talking about how you are attracted to people that are actors.
Mm.
Now, could that have been because you were also acting out a role which was not you?
That is such a brilliant question. And I think yes, actually. I think there's something to that. I think that this idea of being able to have a partner that I could put on a show with probably was very appealing to my subconscious mind. Like, okay, yeah, we can play house together. Let's do this. We'll make it look just like it did on TGI Fridays. Like, let's go for it. All the sitcoms, like I in and when I do think back on it, that's really what I was doing. Like if I look at the course of my adult life, it was one romantic partnership after another, and every single one of them, it was me trying to create that picture that I grew up watching, because all the people on TV had these great families and these great houses with these great careers and this great life. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want that. And so it's just, yeah, I think that's 100%. I love that you asked that. I'm having a light bulb moment right now that actually is probably 100% true.
Absolutely. Well, you are on the online prosperity show, right? So it's moments like this that we live for. So, I mean, obviously, like you said, things didn't seemingly look like they were supposed to be. Those houses on TV are actually TV sets. You know, they don't
Yeah.
stay clean like that. They
You
have to be
know?
maintained, and life has to happen. So pretty much, so you started playing house, but obviously from what you're saying, it didn't sort of pan out. Maybe you could walk us through what that did or happened, if you can, and where did you take the show, because the show has to go on, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it all kind of shifted in the moment that I decided to leave my corporate job. And I did this without discussing it with my husband. I don't think he was very happy about that. It created quite a bit of friction. But I remember I was taking the train to work in the morning. Because I was in Chicago, and the train ride was quite long. It took like 45 minutes to get to the office. And I'm standing on the train, and I had stumbled across Tony Robbins, and he had this, I forget which one of his audios it was, but I had downloaded on my phone. I think it was like maybe Personal Power. I think it was that one. And throughout he's talking about, like, he's going on this like soapbox rant. If you don't like your life, change it. If you don't like your job, change it. If you don't like the relationship you're in, change it. You always have a choice. You can always make a change. And I'm listening to this on the way to work, and I'm getting fired up. I'm like, yes, yes, Tony, you're right. I don't like my life. I don't like the way this is. I'm going to change things. That really stuck with me. Now don't get me twisted. I still got to the office, and I still logged into my computer, and I still went about my day, and I didn't actually do anything for another year. But but that really was like a very pivotal moment, because that stuck with me. And it was like percolating in my head constantly, day in and day out. Every day I went to work. And it almost became this feeling of like, okay, lather, rinse, repeat. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to do my thing, whatever. And I'm just going to keep going. But at some point, I'm going to change this. I don't know how yet, but it's going to happen. And I just let that keep spinning in my head all the time, all the time. And I started trying to find ways to kind of shift my habits and behaviors based on what I was learning from Tony Robbins. And then I found Seth Godin and Darren Hardy and Brian Tracy and all these people who teach us about habit change and things like that. And so I spent that next year like really getting into meditation and journaling. I was up at 5 a.m. I was, going to the gym consistently. And that became very grounding for me. And then finally one day I walked into the office and I looked around and I was like, I'm done. And I typed up my 2 weeks notice and I sent it to my HR person, and I was like, I'm going to go. And I got home and I told my husband, I quit my job. I'm done. I think I'm going to go work at a gym. And I went and got my personal trainer certificate and started working at the gym. It was then that actually, because I was working at the gym, I went from this salaried position that paid quite well. I blew through my retirement savings. I had cashed it in early, and I blew through it to go get my personal trainer certificate and start working at the gym. So now I'm making $10 an hour in Chicago working at a gym and trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to actually make enough money to keep living? Because this is quite a drastic shift in income. And a friend of mine that I worked with at the gym, she was like, hey, there's this work from home job. She's like, it's customer service. So you'd kind of be doing the same thing you did, only you'd be a rep again, but you get to work from home. So you can keep teaching classes here at the gym because the hours are only 7 to 3. So I do that in the morning and then come teach classes in the gym in the evening. And I was like, you know what? Actually, that might be perfect. Working from home sounds pretty great. And so I started working for this company that was called the Health Coach Institute. And they do health coaching and life coaching. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. And I got it. I got the job and I started working there. And 3 months in, a colleague of mine pointed out to me. So the colleague lived in Prague. He's a developer. And He lives in Prague and he sends a message in our little group chat. This is before the days of Slack. So this is 2016. So we used Skype in our remote company. And so he sends a Skype photo of a photo from his balcony. He was working outside. And it was just this landscape of Prague. And I was like, oh my God, that is gorgeous. Where is that? He's like, oh, it's Prague. Like, this is I'm sitting outside on my balcony in my apartment. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go visit there. Like, that looks amazing. At some point, I'm going to find time to travel. And he was like, no, just come and bring your laptop. You can work while you're here. I was like, oh my God, you're right, I can. This isn't just a work from home job. This is a fully remote company. I can work anywhere. This changes everything. And that just like, it's like something inside me lit up. And I had like all these images in my head of like me with my laptop at this city and going to all these different countries. I always wanted to travel for as long as I can remember, but it just felt like that was a thing that wasn't going to be for me because I had such humble beginnings, because the money just wasn't there, because we didn't take family vacations when I was a kid or things like that. I didn't know that I thought only rich people could travel. Like, that was just the rule. And I'm not rich, so I can't travel. But now here's this opportunity. I can travel and I can do that. So I started looking. I was like, hold on a second. If I didn't have to pay the 1,500 a month for this apartment in Chicago, what could I do? And I started looking like Airbnbs long term. Back then it was way less expensive than it is now. And it was so inexpensive. It was like to stay in an Airbnb in Prague for 3 months was like $350 a month. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like that's like nothing. And then when you look at the dollar to crown exchange, food, stuff like that, nothing. And the cost of the flight to get there was only like $750 at the time. So I was like, wait a second. I could actually just go like be a nomad. I'm going to be a digital nomad. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then I spoke to my husband about it. I was like, hey, what if we just like went around the world? And like he was doing freelance videography and photography in addition to his acting. And I was like, you could do that anywhere, right? Like, why don't we just do this? Why don't we just go? And he agreed, which was great. And like within weeks, sold all of our stuff, transferred the apartment over to somebody else, and booked the flights and the Airbnb to go stay in Prague. And I was so ready. I was like, yes, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And it was only 3 weeks later after we landed in Prague that my husband was like, I don't want this life. And I was like, I do want this life. And he's like, no, I want to go buy a house and have kids and be a fireman. And I was like, no, we're out here. I don't want it. I've unlocked something. I can't go back. Like, I need to stay. I need to do this. I can't keep ticking boxes. And that was that.
Oh, thank you so much. And now we've unlocked a second person that completely shifted your perspective in life and your trajectory.
Mm.
The colleague from Prague there. So, I mean, obviously, this must have been devastating. This is something that you viscerally felt you wanted, but then your partner at the time didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Where does this take us?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. At that moment when that happened, when like that realization came that he wanted to go back, I remember feeling it was such a whirlwind. I think my initial thought was, great, another failed relationship. Like, that was my initial thought. Like, oh, I messed up again. Can't seem to keep a man in my life. Oh my goodness. But at the same time, I was like, nothing can convince me that this isn't the right way to go. Because there was something about being in that country and like getting on the trains and the trams and like picking up like all the Czech words and like learning how to converse with the people. And it was so strong inside of me that I was like, but I cannot give this up. And I told myself, like, but we have we started as friends before we got together and eventually got married. And so I thought, surely our friendship won't die. So I kind of told myself all of these things to kind of self-soothe. I was like, everything's going to be okay. Like, he's going to be fine. He's such a charismatic, like, naturally successful person. He's still doing well in his life. Like, we are still in touch. And I mean, he's such an amazing person. So I was like, okay, no, like, everything's going to be okay. I'm going to figure this out. I need to do this. Like, I'm doing this for me. Like, for once, I need to do something for me, not because I feel like I have to, but because I want to. And when he left, I remember, like, we got his flight booked and everything. Like, I mean, we were sharing a bank account. Like, there was a lot of untangling that had to happen. Obviously, like, being a married couple, and then, but luckily, technology, you can get divorced online. So if anyone's out there worried about the complications of divorce, if you don't have kids, you can do it online. It's fine. But yeah, like, I remember feeling when he left the next morning, after he booked his flight to go back, I didn't even go with him to the airport. And, like, we said our goodbyes. There were lots of tears, and, call me when you land. Like, we'll figure this out. We'll figure out what to do next, whatever. But I remember I expected to feel devastated. I expected to feel so sad. But as soon as I closed the door behind him and I looked around the little Airbnb that was going to be my home for the next 3 months, I was just like, I just took this big sigh of relief. Like, I suddenly felt light, and I felt like, okay, this is all me now. Like, everything is on me, and I want it, and I'm ready. Like, let's do this. And that began a path of just, like, deep going inward. Luckily, by this point, I had been exposed to health coaching and life coaching through the company I was working for. And I actually started to take so it was a company that certified people. So you go through a program to learn how to be a coach. And I, as an employee, went through the program to learn how to be a coach. And it unlocked, like, all of this different stuff around personal development and growth and inner work and, inner reflection and self-love and self-care and all of these terms that had never really been taught to me before. And so as I was going through it, because I was going through the program and learning how to be a coach, I had accountability buddies who were also coaches. So I got to be coached. So every time I was going through something, I had a coach to help me work through it, to ask me the powerful questions, to get me thinking, to have me looking at my experience from an objective point of view, to kind of get myself out of my own head. And so another fortunate job for me to end up in, because it gave me access to some really important resources and tools, and to help me cope with all of the stuff that I was dealing with from, I mean, there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes from an ending marriage, or any relationship. And so working through that guilt and that shame and giving myself grace and learning how to be in a mess and not feel like a failure, to be in a mess and allow myself to accept that that's part of being human. And so I no longer was trying to create the picture perfect TV set. I was now learning how to embrace and accept that sometimes you just don't know what's going to come next, and you just have to kind of roll with it. And so that was kind of, so the whole time I was in Prague, and it was winter time, which I think is just so brilliant. Like, it's like a metaphor for the season I was in. So I was just in this sort of, like, slow staying indoors, going inside, finding, rest, finding peace, finding calm, finding all of these things. And then I was really deep into meditation by that point. And so I was meditating consistently. I would set a timer on my phone, sit on the couch, 15, 20 minutes of just being with my thoughts and, like, letting the chaos ensue inside my head, which there was a lot of it. Kind of going backwards and dealing with a lot of my past trauma, finding forgiveness for my parents, for myself, for my siblings, Like there was just so much processing. And then one morning when I was meditating, my 90 days was up in Prague and I had to figure out where I was going to go next. And I was meditating and the most random thought popped into my head, check out South Africa. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Why do I
Oh,
want,
wow.
what's in South Africa? Let me see. Trevor Noah's from South Africa. I watched The Daily Show. That's pretty cool. Like, let me go see what that's about. And I had actually just read his book recently, Born a Crime, so that might have been an influence. But yeah, the thought just popped into my head. And I started researching. I was like, okay, what's the cost in South Africa? What's a B&B cost there? What's the I started like messaging all these different Airbnb hosts, like, what's the deal? I'm traveling alone, single white female. Is there public transport? Is it walkable? What do I have to worry about? And I was lucky enough to find this amazing man, Ben, who was an expat from the UK. He had been a BBC reporter and he was covering the fall of apartheid when that was all happening in the 90s. And he fell in love with the country and relocated. And so he basically has been living there for years. And he was like, no, come. He was like, there's dangerous parts, but it's like anywhere else in the world. I had told him I was from Chicago. He's like, it's not going to be that different to Chicago. He's like, there's certain places you don't go, just avoid the dodgy areas. It's not quite walkable, but I'll help you navigate. Like there's Uber, so you can get around. Like, don't worry, I'll introduce you to people. He was a big salsa dancer. He's like, if you like salsa dancing, which I did, I love dancing. He was like, I'll show you all these people. I'll take you to the clubs, whatever. And true to his word, he introduced me to a lot of amazing people. And yeah, but yeah, I made the decision and in that moment to go to South Africa, and I'm still here today. So, but yeah, it was quite a moment.
Well, absolutely. And thank you so much for walking us through that. I mean, obviously, you have already introduced us to, Tony Robbins in your life. And he says something that's really profound, but it takes a redemptive ear to understand what he says. He says, life happens not to you, but for you,
For
and
you. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And in this particular instance, you did obviously come to a point where the life that you'd built with your partner then just, left as he walked out that door. But you felt a sense of relief, which
Mm.
obviously I'm assuming you got into another character again and, decided this is who I was supposed to be. And then pretty much after 3 months, yet another TV personality influenced who you were going to become. And now we're in, and
That's so true. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, Trevor Noah, good on him.
well, he was born in crime and he had to escape and everything else, but you're
Yeah.
running straight into the belly of the beast. But speaking of running, a lot of people run away. Okay. Obviously, part of your
Mm.
story is about going as far away from, your origins and things of that nature. And very few people run towards themselves. Now, while you were sort of doing all those meditations and cleansing and healing and all that stuff, what was the inner conversation? Because sometimes it will be asking you, who do you think you are?
Mm. Yeah, one of the kind of guiding, and I still do this actually to this day, but a guiding question that I had come to, and I'm trying to remember where I heard it. I heard it from, I mean, at that point I was so deep into personal development, so I was listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of books, but somewhere I came across this question: what about me isn't me?
Hmm.
And that's such a profound question. What about me isn't me? So I had to really look at, what is my programming? What did growing up in my environment tell me about who I am? And is that actually true? And all of these different roles that I had played, like the manager, the wife, the older sister, what the best friend, like all these different labels that kind of get placed on us. Starting to kind of dig through that. What about me isn't me? And where did it come from? And what made me choose to embody this value, this belief system, this idea, this perspective? Like what led me to that? And I remember when I was learning how to be a coach, we were taught to identify the positive intention of any behavior. So this is kind of like behavior change work. Every behavior that we have, every habit that we've developed holds within it a positive intention. Something inside of us told us that we must do this thing for a certain reason. Sometimes it's because we want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, we want to feel joy, we want to feel, and I think it all kind of comes back to the three main things: love, safety, and belonging. I think that's what all humans wish to experience. We want to feel loved, we want to feel safe, we want to feel like we belong. That's what gives us this like feeling of, okay, it's okay for me to be here and be human. I'm allowed to take up space. Love, safety, and belonging. And so I started to really dig into like my habits, my behaviors, my thoughts, and even like, you know, the goals I would set for myself. No longer was I setting goals because this is what successful people do. I was trying to understand the goals and how they align with my values, with my natural strengths, like what I just seem to be naturally good at, not because I practiced or because someone told me I had to do this or because someone said, oh, you're so good at this, but because I felt like, yes, I feel comfortable and strong and good in doing these specific things. So kind of really digging into that. And that was a big part of what sort of helped me kind of work more towards myself and understand who I really am. So if I were to get rid of all of the labels and all of the programming and all of the habits and all of the behaviors, what lives inside of there? Who is that person? And that's where I started to kind of really recognize like, oh, okay, I'm a person who loves. Like, I just love. I'm just a big, giant ball of love. That is me. And if I strip away all the stuff, that's what you get. You get a floating being full of love. Like, that's the core. And it's through doing all of that work and kind of digging into stuff that I was like, okay, now I know who I am. And understanding that the programming doesn't go away. People always talk about like, oh, reprogram your mind, rewire your brain. Like, cool, that's good. You can create new pathways, yes, but the old pathways don't just disappear. So there will be circumstances that will trigger, is the popular word, that will trigger those old behaviors and those old habits and those old thoughts and those old beliefs. And I've learned that like, what's important is the awareness of them and the awareness of where they come from and the awareness of the purpose they served at the time when they were created, and getting yourself into that space of choice. Like, okay, I know what this is. I know where it comes from. I recognize it. I understand why it's coming back around now. Let me decide to go on the new pathway that I've been creating. And so it's just this constant, like, you know, checking, self-checking, like being aware, being present in the moment, like paying attention to all of the automatic stuff that happens, so that you can choose something differently. And yeah, like that's what it takes to be authentic and to be your real self. Authentic is such a buzzword. Oh, I'm going to be authentic. I'm being myself. Everyone can just deal with it. Like, cool. But actually, to be authentic, you have to accept the fact that, you know, you are a robot. You were programmed. You were programmed to be a certain way, but that's okay. It doesn't matter that you were programmed a certain way. You can still choose differently, but you have to be aware of it.
You know what I like about what you're saying is so many people just live in a humdrum type life, you know, like what you were saying, just cruising along, go to kinder, go to high school, all checking those boxes, get married and buy a house with a picket fence and all that stuff. Whereas you presented your life with so many pattern breaks that with all of them, your wiring would be so different, because even if you try to be American in Joburg, you know, the environment in and of itself will automatically make you be present, because one, they're speaking a whole different language, and two, all these people were already growing and being while you were not there. So you also need to be a part of all of that stuff that is happening. And and it really makes you become radically alive, right?
It really, really does. And I think that, and which is what inspired the name of my coaching practice, Radically Alive, because I think that's important. Like, if you think about radical, push the envelope, stretch beyond the boundaries, like push outside the box. And I've always kind of been a little bit of a rebel at heart. I was never really into authority. Like, teachers didn't like me very much. I was naughty. I did not do what I was supposed to do. But I don't like being told what to do. And so I think that's probably an undercurrent of a lot of like me making these drastic choices to push myself outside of my comfort zone, because I'm just the type of person that it has to be big or it's not going to matter. And so, but I think there's something to that. Like to your point, it's impossible not to get pattern breaks when you are in a completely unfamiliar environment. And this is actually something I even impress upon my clients is find ways to make yourself have to be uncomfortable. Like get uncomfortable. Like, and even small stuff. And I'll give you an example now. Just 2 days ago, I completely rearranged the entire setting of my living room and I moved stuff into all different places. And I do this regularly. Choosing to wear a different pair of shoes every single day, like small things like that. You have to do something that makes it so it's not always so familiar, so comfortable. It's like fighting complacency, because if you get complacent, you're missing the opportunity to really be confronted with your programming. And like you won't see your programming unless you have something to snap you awake and be like, oh, where is this coming from? So if you can be uncomfortable as much as possible, like that's where the magic lives. People avoid discomfort so much. I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't like it. And even me, like I'll get, really intense anxiety symptoms sometimes if I'm super uncomfortable. But that's such a beautiful thing, because I know now in those moments when I'm feeling so anxious and so emotionally heightened, like, hold on, there's something important here that I need to look at. Thank you, anxiety, for showing up so that I can recognize, okay, like what's happening? What's making me so uncomfortable? Where does this come from? What's the meaning I'm making out of this situation? What do I believe to be true in this moment? What's actually true in this moment? And start kind of going through that internal dialogue. And I don't think that I would have been able to do that if I hadn't pushed myself into these situations. Not that everyone has to go and pick up their life and like move to a new country, but find ways to get uncomfortable, because when
Preach
you're
to the choir
uncomfortable, you
here.
learn. Yeah.
I say you're preaching to the choir here. I also had to do a complete opposite and things of that nature.
Yes.
But in all this journey that you've taken us on, and thank you so much. This has been fantastic. You literally were presenting to us different versions of yourself that have
Mm.
now morphed into the person that we've just spent a bit of time with. But I mean, obviously, you asked that question, what about you isn't you, which I think is very profound. But
Mm.
Jamie, have you become yourself? Who have we met today?
Yeah. So, I have to say, Prosper, I am still in the thick of a mess right now.
Mm.
So, and when I started writing the book, actually, so once I got to South Africa, I fell in love with the country. I wanted to stay. And I stayed every 90 days on my passport. I would leave and come back, leave and come back. So I've traveled to a few different places. I lived in the UK for a while. I stayed in Paris. I stayed in Bali. Like I stayed in all these different places, but I kept coming back here. And I fell in love with a young South African man. And I got a spousal visa because we decided to move in together. And it was one of the most beautiful partnerships that I've ever had. It was amazing. And I thought I found my person. I was like, okay, I am myself now, and I've come into this new relationship whole and feeling grounded in who I am. And We had been together for 6 years. And I continued working full time, but I was starting to slowly think about maybe trying to do my coaching practice full time instead. So I was kind of coaching on the side sporadically while still working full time, doing learning and development. So I was with that same company from 2016. I was with them all the way up until 2021 when COVID hit and they did all these massive layoffs. Then I just got into learning and development for a mental health company. So I was doing learning and development for an American company while I was living out here, and it was beautiful. And in July last year, I started to feel like the schedule was becoming too much because working American hours in South Africa, I was working until midnight or 1 a.m. and trying to continue keeping up with the few coaching clients that I had while also managing that sleep schedule. I was like, no, this is a bit much. So I spoke with my partner and I said, hey, what if I just left my full time job and tried to go all in on coaching? And he was like, he's like, let's think about this. And we looked at the finances. He said, yeah, I can carry us both. He's like, I know it takes a few years to build a business. He built a business himself. He's in wealth management. And so he's built his practice over the years while we were together. And he was like, I know what it takes. Like, he's like, but you know what? He's like, the full time work that you're doing, even with coaching on the side, there's a cap in your income. He's like, I believe that what you have to offer is valuable and the income could go so much further than what you're making full time. So I back you. He's like, let's do this. And I was like, okay, cool. So I put in my notice at my full time job and I was so excited and I was ready to go. I'm going to go all in on my coaching business. And 3 weeks later, he decided he didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. And he took off to Cape Town. And I have been recovering from that since last year because I had just left my job. I went back to my boss and I was like, hey, can I rescind my notice? And she had just hired someone 2 days prior to that happening. So I was like, okay. So I'm out of work and I'm going to try and build a business. And the love of my life just decided to leave. Okay, all right. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? The story of the book completely changed because the book was going to end with me meeting the love of my life. And look what happens when you take a risk and take a leap and live radically alive. That was the initial premise of the book. So now the book has changed. And throughout this year, it has become my therapy. So I've been sort of going through my whole process. And I end the book not on a note of now I am myself and now everything is good and happy endings. I end the book in the mess because I'm in the mess right now. I am still picking up whatever small contract work I can pick up, trying to get into corporates to do leadership training for them. I've had a couple of great contracts there. So just kind of picking up all this little work and trying to make ends meet. But I've literally been in the midst of trying to somehow build a business while also navigating I would say my very first heartbreak. I don't think I've ever had my heart broken before. So there's another, but that's what happened. And so I would say I have become more of myself throughout my journey. But I think that since this breakup has happened and since I've been navigating this sort of like being in a foreign country, like it's not like I could go stay at my mom's. Like she's not here. She's on the other side of the world. And I'm still waiting for Home Affairs to give me my permanent ID. It's been pending for 2 years because efficiency isn't exactly the word I would use to describe Home Affairs. And I'm hoping that they give it to me before they realize that we've broken up because it is a spousal application. And so yeah, so I'm learning new things about myself every day. So I would say the journey to becoming oneself is it's not linear and it's not ending. You'll never actually get it done. But the beauty, I think, is in the unfolding. And I think that the more you kind of lean into the idea that there's no final destination. It's not like I'm going to wake up one day and be like, I am the most authentic, best version of myself ever. Like, that's never going to happen. It will not happen because that
Mm.
doesn't exist. Because every moment that you are alive, you are becoming someone new. Even if you think about it scientifically, like biologically, our cells are in a constant state of regeneration. Our
Mm.
organs are in a constant state of shifting and changing and growing and dying and whatever. So, like in any given moment, I am not the same person now that I was when we started this conversation, and
Oh,
that's kind of part of the beauty of it. And so, like, whatever is happening in your world, in your life, in your existence, like, it's not ever meant to be permanent. Like, nothing is meant to be permanent. And the less fixated we get on that, and the less we get attached to this idea of being our best self, like, you can be your best self in any given moment. It's just the best that it can be given the circumstances at that time. Like, it's never going to be the same. And so yeah, so I have become myself, and I'm still becoming myself.
oh, well, absolutely. And thank you so much for clarifying that. And Jamie, I must say, your life story and your experience have so much value on so many different fronts that I think this then puts you in a very unique position to be the coach that you are now. Because if somebody comes in with, oh, my parents were this, you'll be like, how much time have you got? You know, if somebody comes in with relationship stories, you'd be like, oh, how much time have you got? If somebody says, oh, I can't find myself in this new place that I've been, you'd be like,
Mm.
hold my passport. I'm waiting for my ID here. You know what I mean? And I kind of feel
Yeah.
like not a lot of people can be in the position that you are in. And that's why I always recommend people that come on the show to pay attention to whatever is happening in their lives, so that one day, not only are you going to have a good story to tell, but you have a good story to tell on the Online Prosperity Show. Now, for those that are watching
Mm.
right now and they are looking at you as some person who obviously things and life has happened for you, what can they learn from you and how can they get a hold of you, or where are you in the world right now?
Mm. Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place. You can find me online. On Instagram, I'm JamieGantt.coach. And you can find me, my website is radicallyalivecoaching.com. You can also keep up with the release of my book. So right now I have a crowdfunding campaign on a platform called Publishizer. And so basically this, it works like almost like a Kickstarter, but for authors. And so the idea is that people can pre-order an advanced copy of the book. And what that does is the more pre-orders I get, then there are publishers attached to this platform. And so publishers can express interest and decide to pick up the book. But even if it doesn't get picked up by a traditional publisher, the money that's being raised through the pre-orders will then be taken and put towards getting the book to print and getting it distributed and things like that. And so you can go on to the campaign and get your copy. You can hear this story that I talked about today, but in much greater detail and much more depth. And you can follow along with me. It's almost like a little adventure book. We'll go on the adventure. And I do have some reflections for the reader themselves. So I've taken a lot of my psychology, because I got my master's in positive psychology while I was earning my coaching credentials. And so I take a lot of the tools and strategies that I've used throughout my journey, and I sort of give them back to the reader, and I give them their own reflection prompts and their own journaling invitations so that they can kind of navigate their own experiences while also hopefully being a little bit entertained and inspired by mine.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I personally think in life we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And in what you have given us is not only the receipts of you having lived a very remarkable life, and through all of that, you've had lessons that you've learned, and now you're just sending the elevator down for those that are still at the bottom of pecking order for them to actually maybe skip all those levels of what you went through and actually just go on and find themselves. So I will definitely put all those links in the show notes below. And hopefully, people will rally behind and especially maybe buy a few of the pre-orders, because I think your story really deserves a greater platform and things of that nature. Now, Jamie, I know you and I could talk for days and everything else, but as everything on TV happens in 45 minutes plus commercials, and you get to hear all their lives. Was there anything else that maybe I should have asked you that I didn't ask you today?
I don't know if there's anything that you should have asked me. I think we've gone in some interesting places. I've really appreciated this conversation. And I even got a couple of my own light bulb moments because of the questions you asked, which I love. So thank you for that. I love any opportunity to take even further reflection on my experiences. So that was awesome.
Good idea. What an amazing journey. I mean, from corporate titles, call center, places to radical truth and radically becoming alive, because half of the things that you mentioned is things that so many people just hear about, but you lived through it. You know what I mean? From all that stuff that you had to go through to now being in alignment. Yes, maybe you might think you are in in the mess, like you said, but it is like a season. Trees don't walk away from where they're planted just because they've lost all their trees. No, they stand rooted. So there you are. And I viscerally believe you are onto something, and just hang in there. When the leaves start sprouting, I can viscerally see another book, another life changed, and another, life touched. So keep going.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I've already got ideas for the next book. I'm actually excited. So I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna keep becoming myself.
Yeah, you had done so well, Jamie, and up until now you've just committed the ultimate sin, on the online prosperity show. Now you're gonna have to redeem yourself.
You're my accountability buddy now, you and the audience. So now I have to follow through. See,
Now
that's
we're
how
gonna
you do
have to
it
wait.
there. I just inadvertently gave everybody a little tip. Like, say that build the plane while it's in the air. If you really want to do something, claim it publicly, then you have to do it.
There you
Can't
go.
get out.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Now, thank you so much. But to everybody watching, I want you to take a moment to ask yourself, I mean, where in your life do you reckon you're performing instead of actually living? I asked this question earlier on. And also, what aren't you? What about you that isn't you right now? And I think I'm going to also reflect on that question a little bit. And I'm really excited for what we are going to do, especially after hearing, your comments below there. So check out Jamie's links. I'll be putting them in the show notes below. Follow her on her socials, and definitely support her upcoming book. You may actually find yourself in some of those pages more than you'd expect. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because in the next episode, we're going to be talking about ideas that will help you create a happier existence, not just more success, but a fuller life. I can't wait to see what you do with this information today. Bye for now.